Hello, welcome to Rose Does Business Basics. I hope you're well this evening. I am trying a few things on my audio, so please bear with me while I work on them. I'm in the process of trying to get a new microphone, so I'm just using the one on the camera for now, and so we'll just see how that one goes. So anyway, I'm Rose Davidson from doesbiz.com. And each week I will be bringing to you topics related to business and other things that will be helpful to you if you're a startup or have been in business for a while, and perhaps that your knowledge just needs a little bit of a top-up. And this week I'm discussing how to make a persuasive PowerPoint presentation. And as always, please leave your feedback in the comments, and I'll really look forward to talking to you when I'm all tongue-tied tonight. Look forward to answering your comments later. If I don't get to them tonight, then I will definitely get to them after the live stream. So let's get started on these slides. So how to make a persuasive PowerPoint presentation. Let's see. For most professionals, you'll have to create a PowerPoint presentation at least once in your career. Presenting, as with other soft skills like communication, leadership and negotiation, is now a must-have for most roles in the workplace. This means it's important to learn how to make compelling presentations, even if you're not an experienced presenter, speaker or designer. Learn how to make a more persuasive PowerPoint presentation that will grab your audience attention and move them into action. Oh dear, come on, please play nicely. There we go. So it's not easy to grab your audience's attention, and having a really well structured, thought out PowerPoint slide or presentation stops your audience from going to sleep halfway through, basically. Things just aren't playing nicely for me tonight. I don't know why. There we go. So we need to learn how to start a PowerPoint presentation persuasively. And one thing that you need to keep in mind as you're planning your persuasive presentation is how you're going to start it. You don't want to write it out at the beginning, right at the start, but throughout the planning process you need to be looking all the way through for a hook for your presentation. The hook is crucial with a strong beginning, and you can draw your listeners in. And without a hook, it can take them a while to adjust to being receptive to your message. Here are some of the characteristics of a strong hook. So grab your audience's attention, and when they hear your hook, it should force them to focus on the presentation and wait in anticipation for what you're going to say next. This means that it should be brief and it should be to the point. Number 2 is address their wants and fears. It's also a great start to addressing your audience's most pressing concerns up front. If you're not giving a persuasive presentation to small business owners on how they can get customers, you can start with something like, you're here because at some point you've looked at sales and thought, oh, I could have done better. Addressing their main concerns, especially if it's emotionally strong, reminds them of what's at stake. Most importantly, you're suggesting that you do understand where they're coming from. And ask a question. Starting with a question leads your audience to try to come up with the answer in their heads. It's also a good idea to ask a question that leads people to raise their hand or interact with you in some way, so that they feel more involved in the presentation. given the above example, an alternative beginning could be, how many of you at your sales last month and looked at your sales last month and felt disappointed? If you want to take a deeper look into creating a strong hook, you can check out some guides that are available on the internet at any time. So you need to put your audience first, and so one common mistake that presenters make is focusing mostly on their own ideas and their own stories. And unless you tie these things with your audience's needs, they might end up bored and distracted, or worse, they might even walk out. So to prevent this, put your audience first. Before you start writing your persuasive presentation, it's best to clarify who your audience is and what their needs and expectations are. As you write your presentation, ask yourself the following questions. Why are they watching your presentation? So what do they hope to get out of it? Figure out what their expectations and goals are and how your presentation fits into both of these. If you can conduct a survey or get in touch with your audience beforehand, this can give you a more specific idea about what they're looking for. How much knowledge and experience do they have on the subject? If there are any knowledge gaps, be prepared to fill them. Also, avoid spending too much time on the ideas that are too simple for your audience. For example, there's no point in explaining how to use basic Photoshop tools to a room full of advanced graphic designers. That would be pretty silly. How would they feel about your primary message? Are there any concerns or hesitations that your audience might have against the message you're trying to relay? Be prepared to address these concerns throughout your presentation. What possible questions will they have along the way? So these are all to do with putting your audience first. So answering your audience's internal questions as you go through your presentation lets them know that you're on the same page. Plus, if there's a Q&A portion after you speak, it would have already answered the most basic questions in your presentation, paving the way for more interesting advanced questions in the Q&A. And answering these questions can help you to craft a presentation that's as engaging as possible for your audience. So think in pictures and stories. As Plato said, those who tell the stories rule society. So as you flesh out the points of your presentation, keep in mind the old saying, show, don't tell. Rather than just stating your points matter-of-factly, find ways to deliver them through metaphors or stories. This may make your most important ideas easier to understand and remember. Another advantage to thinking in metaphors and stories is that the more visual the metaphor, the easier for you to pick photos and graphics to go with your presentation. And here are some tips that can help you come up with metaphors and stories that you can use. So find existing stories. So for every crucial point you deliver, think about some stories from history, case studies, or your own experiences that can help your audience see the point in a fuller context. If you're going to present to your company about the perils of bad customer support, tell your own horror stories of bad customer support and that led you to switch brands or shops or whatever. If you're presenting to a client the dangers of failing to keep their website secure and how technical errors and client data leaks can harm their business, look for case studies or news items about businesses that closed shop or lost customers because of insecure websites. And you can also use historical examples. A book that illustrates this point is called The Lean Startup. It goes the personal route by telling stories about someone else's own startup journey. So get inspiration from Hollywood, and I wouldn't have thought that, but yeah, that's one of the things that I researched and found, is that psychological research shows that stories don't have to be factual to be persuasive. Even fiction or a simulation can be powerful. And one of the more emotional resonant scenes in the documentary or presentation. You can also use scenes and characters from popular movies and television to illustrate your points. The important thing is that the audience understands and remembers it. And create a storyboard. So while you're thinking in terms of visuals and stories, it might also help to create a basic storyboard of your entire presentation. This is useful for setting some early plans on how your presentation will look, not just in terms of photos and graphics, but also the layout of the text and how the slides look when shown one after the other. So picking a persuasive PowerPoint template and creating your slides is the 5th step on this list rather than the first, but for good reason. The content of your presentation should come first. When you're starting out, it's easy to get hung up on choosing templates and fonts and graphics and the layout and the elements and the slides and all sorts of things. But without strong content that appeals to your audience, it doesn't matter how beautiful and well designed your slides are, they won't wash with the audience. Presentation design is critical to success. You need your visuals to complement the ideas that you present. When you're ready to choose your PowerPoint design template, there is some important criteria that you should be looking for. So the first one is be unique. And you need to do this as much as possible using the most common stock templates that people use. These are typically the ones that come with PowerPoint by default. When you use a persuasive PowerPoint template design that everyone's seen over and over and over and over and over again, they might assume that your presentation will be equally predictable and commonplace. Then your audience will stop paying attention as soon as they see it, the very first slide, and it will become death by PowerPoint. You need to make sure that the slides are readable. So when testing your templates, try to reduce the size of the screen so that you can still read the text effortlessly. And if you're presenting to a large audience, it's important that everyone can read the text on the slides, especially those people sitting at the back or those that have poor eyesight. And use interesting imagery. Since you'll be using stories and metaphors in your presentation, it's best to accompany those with photos or graphics that fully capture the idea. These images can also break the monotony from too many consecutive slides that are just text. So practice and get feedback for your slides. It's really important, especially if you want to give a really good presentation. And now that the visuals and your text of your presentation are ready, it's time to practice. You're practicing for several reasons. First, you want to make sure that your presentation fits within your allotted presentation time. And I try to do that with all of mine, and last week I went under time, which was great, but yeah, it was a big void, so I had to babble on a little bit. Going over time might also affect the timing and length of breaks. Consider these costs if you're tempted to make your presentation longer than it should be, or if you want to skip practicing altogether. You don't want to be the speaker that everyone in the event ends up resenting. Instead, keep your presentation compact. More importantly, you're practicing to get feedback, and use this opportunity to record a video of yourself speaking. Then try to evaluate your performance in the video, and consider questions like, do you speak at a good enough pace to be understood? Do you use different tonalities for emphasis? And do you appear confident? You can even show the video to some trusted colleagues or family and get their feedback as well, and make sure that it's, you know, constructive. Don't, because, you know, family's a bit like, well, yeah, I liked it, but they won't tell you they didn't really like it and that it was boring. And don't be frightened if it scares you a little bit. It needs to be done, especially if you're just starting out doing presentations. It'll be helpful. So for each run through of your presentation, set a specific improvement goal based on your observations or the feedback that you get. So should you speak slower? Should you speak louder? Would your presentation seem more engaging if you moved your hands? And by doing this deliberate practice, you'll end up with a greatly improved presentation style, no matter how awkward you were when you started. So having compelling content and design for your presentation is good, but to make it great, make sure it's polished. And here are some final touches you can apply to your presentation if you're finishing it up. Proper alignment. Make sure that all the elements of each slide are properly aligned. This maintains the balance of your text and your graphics, and alignments are adjusted one slide at a time. First, for each slide that you have to adjust, select all the objects, then from the PowerPoint Format tab, select Align. Embedded fonts. It's possible that the equipment you've been using on presentation day might not have the same fonts that you're using on your slides. So to avoid such mess ups, embed your chosen fonts with the presentation. So, and there's, to do this, go to the File tab, then click Options, and when the Options menu launches, click the Save option from the menu on the left. Scroll down until you see the checkbox marked Embedded Fonts in the file. This check this box and choose the type of embedding you want. This will ensure that when you open your presentation, the text will be displayed as you designed it. You can also export slides, and you can export it to a PDF or a JPEG, and when you send or bring your files to the venue, make sure that you save them to PowerPoint, PDF and JPEG as a contingency plan in case there are some software or hardware problems that prevent your PowerPoint file from displaying correctly. And then run through your cues. Do a run through of your cues. For the last practice sessions, make sure you include your slide cues in your rehearsal. It's going to be inconvenient, confusing or jarring for you and your audience if you've got to keep looking at your slides behind you as you're presenting. So a persuasive PowerPoint presentation tips is to know your audience. So use a visually attractive template, adhere to the basic design principles for a presentation, export your presentations to a PDF, and establish and maintain eye contact with your audience. And so you need to know your audience and what they respond to. Makes it easier for you to tailor the presentation to their interests and use language and phrases that they respond to. Use body language to your advantage. Body language says a lot about you and can do wonders for showing your audience why they should care about the topic of your presentation. Remember to address their wants and fears early on so that you can capture their attention and remind them what's at stake. Use storytelling to make your presentation more relatable and powerful, and provide background on the topic of your presentation instead of jumping straight into data and information. You need to practice your speech and the delivery of the persuasive presentation well in advance. Get to the venue early and test all the equipment such as the projector, the microphone and the connections. That can save a lot of red faces later on. Remember to breathe to avoid running out of breath or talking too fast, which will make it difficult for your audience to understand you. And avoid standing still, as this can make you appear stiff and cause your audience to tune out and be bored. So how to make the most out of your PowerPoint. As I mentioned earlier, that your slide deck needs to be attractive in order to help you tell the story behind your presentation. For starters, you need a unique, persuasive PowerPoint template that matches your industry or your topic. Throughout your presentation, use larger size fonts to ensure your presentation is readable. Consider reducing the size of your template on the screen to check readability. Another tip to remember is to use alignment properly to ensure your slides look balanced and pleasing to the eye. So, finally, all this prep work is worth it. It is, truly. If you do it right, the work won't go to waste. From planning your hook to coming up with metaphors and picking your right template, creating a persuasive presentation sounds like a lot of work, but it really isn't. The good news is that if you do it right, the work will not be wasted. In fact, it'll be a bigger waste of an opportunity if you just wing it. By spending enough time preparing your message, content, design, and delivery of your presentation, you can be sure that your audience will appreciate and be persuaded by your final presentation. Now, I always, my favourite thing is making PowerPoint presentations. I really do enjoy them. Excuse me. They light me up because I can use my creativity. I can use lots of other things, lots of templates and things that I have, which is what I enjoy doing. So there is a checklist available in the Rose Does Business Basics Facebook group. You'll find that in the Units tab. I'm not quite sure which unit it's in, but it's listed there somewhere. I'm still trying to get this transition thing right. Sorry, keep babbling on and you can't say anything. So yeah, it gives it's 5 easy ways to make your presentation pop. It's a free checklist for anyone that's joins the group. You can have that for free. So please head on over, and the link to the group is in the comments. So I look forward to that. So I hope you enjoyed that presentation tonight. I know I enjoyed giving it. So if you have enjoyed tonight's show, I would really love you to share this with your Facebook friends. If you have gotten something out of it, I'm sure that they will too. And it's just as easy as clicking the share button below. I'll get this right eventually. And sharing it to your timeline. So, and to get any of the documents related to this or any other broadcast, you can get them in the Rose Does Business Basics Facebook group. And as I said, the link is in the comments. Next week I will be discussing more effective PowerPoint presentations and animations. But before I go tonight, have you ever felt frustrated when halfway through your presentation you were looking out over the crowd and half of them are either playing on their phones or nodding off? And do you feel that like your PowerPoint presentations are blah and boring and not grabbing your audience's attention, there's just a bunch of text and there's no graphics or anything, or not many graphics, and you're using clip art instead of images. And yeah, I found that with a beautifully branded and coordinated, appealing presentation that people look at and say, wow, can help you to deliver your message in a way that couldn't be done without those images and that punchy message that's up there on the screen. And did you know that research tells us that there's a proven science behind PowerPoint presentations? Yep. Scientific research has confirmed that the human brain has the mental capacity to process only a limited amount of information at any given time. And the second principle is that you can transform PowerPoint presentations from dull and bewildering to engaging and memorable, and it's known as picture superiority effect. This effect is the scientific construction that describes how the human brain thinks in terms of pictures, and therefore pictures are more easily understood and remembered than words. So do you remember as a child, you had picture books and people would read to you, but you remember the pictures much more than you did the writing or the story that the person was telling. So yeah, the PowerPoint's a bit like that, and when you use really good images on them, they'll remember that better. So to illustrate this, I did have a client who had a problem with their slide deck, and it to me was death by PowerPoint. It wasn't very engaging, although they did give it a good go, I must say. But it didn't, even though their message was really powerful, their slides didn't have the persuasiveness of their message. So so this is where the 5 easy ways to make your PowerPoint presentation pop comes in, because it's a checklist to make sure that your presentations match whatever it is that you need to do to fix up your presentation, so they're popping to your audience, and your audience is going, oh wow, I really like this. So just want to say thank you for joining me here on 5 Foot Rope TV, and while you're here, make sure you go back and have a look at some of the other shows on the page. We have some really amazing presenters here, and I would love for you to check them out. Anyway, that's all from me tonight, and I look forward to your company next time. My name is Rose Davidson from doesbiz.com, and thank you for joining me. Bye for now.